Poet Sam Taylor, author of Body of the World, reads and discusses his work.
Accident. A beacon moving through the darkest crime scene. My friend said, when I told him I didn't know what love was. 2 months later, Joel woke up, reclined in a truck that had no doors or windshield, his left shoe missing, the driver's seat beside him empty. Somebody was calling his name. No, not his name, just calling him so precisely it tugged his sternum like a name. He rose, walked around the vehicle. The tires were gone, 2 wheels stripped to their axles. And there she was on the ground, sitting against the truck, legs outstretched. He felt relieved. She must have collapsed, pouting at herself, sheepish for the mess she'd caused. Where was the road? He heard it humming in the distance. He leaned down to her, but she did not move. He was terrified then of the silence he felt that moment, which was not the quiet of trees or the moon or of hot tea, but the silence of somewhere else, of a lake being where a girl should be. I didn't ask him if he saw a beacon in that field. The windshield shattered 60 yards away, the sky a frigid wishing well. I imagine what he would have to say, waking in the twisted metal dark, walking round the ford to find her sitting in the grass, already gone, her suitcase open 50 feet away. That there was no beacon, just taillights and windows scattered in the weeds, the truck's steel carcass, and the stars they had shared, now his alone, tickling her shell. The beacon was nowhere. He was the beacon, he would have to say, standing alone, his pulse snapping against the sky, filling the veins of the night, plasma, cartilage, bone, crying out for her, her jacket flapping in the bush. He would have to say that love does not mean preservation alone, but also creation and destruction, and only then is a thing complete, is it revealed, like the windshield shattered 60 yards away, like Samaya dead, sitting calmly in the grass after the truck she crashed flipped over 15 times. Some things are impossible, and they come true, maybe all things. 2 days later, he returned to the road, found a 2-inch groove that trailed into the shrub, followed it, picking up his wallet, a cell phone, her water bottle, a letter he had written her last summer, half rain-bled. The truck towed and gone, he found her spilled menstrual pads still caught in the sumac, left them sobbing. I imagine what he would have to say, that there is no thing that is not a beacon, no thing that is not a flag in a mute's hand trying to reach us, or a window holding a face. Except in some spots the face shines through more than others, like in Samaya alive, or like that night as he leaned over her, noticing her left foot in the grass was bare like his own. And 2 days later, when his father drove him back, he found on a sun-washed hill, beneath a tall pine, her boot standing upright, still laced and tied. Hologram. When you are sailing and the wind on your brow makes your outside feel like a blue heart, don't forget that it's dark inside your pocket and that the pocket watch that is not there lies under a glass window in downtown Houston, where a Mexican boy thinks of his grandfather, points, asks how much it costs. Don't forget, he breakdances in the evening at the Y, and the girl in the corner who just watches and says, "Miguel, you're not using your shoulder," is also watching you as you suddenly stand, feeling brittle as the cliffs and so small a hawk could drag you off. But the girl is happy to feel the wind on your arm and know there is no end to the commas in the blue scripture, though she thinks more often of whether her parents will be watching television or fighting when she gets home that night, and of whether or not she is pretty. It seems too soon to be thinking about the end of the world, when only 150 years ago this great idealistic nation was fighting itself with bayonets. Too soon to think the weather might be gone. Whether or not we act now, too late, too soon for the trees to die, for the glaciers to melt, for the polar bear to bow upon his prayer rug of ice and go under. After such a brief century of ease and bounty for a few people, too many, too few, too many. Such a brief time in Macy's and the Cinema Paradiso, such a brief ride in the Cadillac around the block. Too late, too soon for the water to be gone, for the rivers to collapse before the sea, for the fish to fly from the ocean. After we only just arrived, after slavery just ended, too late, too soon for it to begin again on the other side of oceans. After just a few years feeling free to move about the cabin at 31,000 feet, a few days with the lights left on in the kitchen. After the first black and white photograph had just appeared, after our image emerged emblazoned on the wall in the magazine, after we saw ourselves from space like a tribesman handed a mirror, like a Christian handed a mirror, too late, too soon for the stars to vanish, after we just saw ourselves appear on the outskirts of an endless night, after the long march, after the frenzy and scramble up out of the dust and plankton, too late, too soon, too late to turn back upon ourselves spinning in space, in our lit corridors of knowledge, our intricate matrices of speech, our global city of ceaseless arrival, our blue-green wonder, too late, too soon to say goodbye. Arc. As it is given, it is whispered, it shall be lost. It begins with your name and the marble block that becomes your face. It begins with a city where your cry is small as the seeds of coriander. It begins with a clawfoot bath and a wind of pine, mother's black hair, a flickering street light, the waxy yellow skin of starfruit, and sneaking in to read your father's manuscript. It begins with seeing a movie and walking out into a storm. Then everything speeds up. A jackhammer, lunch counters, people like a million pebbles, airports, orchids, dental floss, and soon you have forgotten that the world is new. And in the middle, you will be a two-piece suit between traffic signals. But in the end, the underside of ambrosia and the breath of green tea. In the middle, women will come to you naked, with hair clips given to them by their grandmothers, a sari from the Indian coast, a limp from when they fell running through the park. You will watch them try on shoes, and you will wash them with a vanishing bar of oatmeal soap. It begins with one woman on a stone bench waiting beneath a sycamore. Her body will be filled with torn photographs, and you will carry them in and out of Texacos piece them together by fluorescent light. When she leaves, it will be because of a complex equation, a calculus that includes measurements of how the bar home change at dusk in children's pockets, angles of first hallways, additions and subtractions of plovers, sandpipers, or something simple and inscrutable as the surface of a circle. The digits of pi will follow her down unrepeating streets, past crates of oranges, gaping mouths of fish, into other rooms, books that you will never read. Then there will be strangers, elevators, stones scattered in indoor hotel gardens, the giant green wings of Luna moths, a broom, dust, maybe another, hands like obsolete maps, maybe children, small moons that seem to wane, as your light fades, swallowed into the texture of hay bales, into the coffee mug light, the banana leaf light. You will wash the knives, chop cedar. The sun will keep setting deeper in your flesh, and the dark light, as it leaves, it will whisper, I was never yours. My writing process in general has evolved to the point where I kind of have a generative stage where I will be writing a lot of things in a very kind of sketch-like fashion. So it's sort of like making sketches. And there'll be stuff that isn't filled in at that stage. But it's just kind of getting the structure of the poem, where it's going. And certain lines will be, certain lines will come in that stage that'll be like the crucial lines. But a lot of times the parts of the poem that get to that point or that go from one point like that to the next, I'll just kind of sketch out where it's going. And then I have another stage where I take things from that earlier stage and work on them and finish them. And so even within that makes it kind of like a binary, that kind of makes a binary model, but even that simplifies it a little bit. It's kind of a continual process of different stages closer to the final product, and with a different balance of, I think, the different parts of my mind, one's mind, of like with increasing critical mind being involved, and whereas the early stage is mostly just a creative, generative side of the mind, and but they're always both there, and the balance just changes as it goes on. And so it's interesting because I don't really relate to a model of like writing something and revising something, because there's just a continual process of something taking shape. My process is quite various, and it has become more so. It's become more diverse, and what I'm describing is more with my newer work. Most of the poems I read now and stuff from Body of the World, I think my process was slightly more ordered at that stage, where I would be more focused on, okay, I'm working on this poem, I'm working on that poem. Whereas now I may, like right now I have 50 things in process, and that's my process. And I don't think there's any way that anyone can go through life without absorbing a lot of images. So, it's just giving them opportunity to come out, I think. Certainly there's a lot of craft and learning how to make an image well, but I think everyone's mind is full of images. Ideally, in the kind of inspired state, or whatever you want to call it, things just arise that fit that moment and are sort of drawn to the force of what the poem is saying and where it's moving. Some images are like accident images, although things change, and I don't know. It's hard to define how they come. I think there's a certain aspect of just the magic of the process.